What happens when a rideshare driver picks up a passenger who's been dead for years? Watch The Forgotten Passenger to uncover the terrifying truth. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more spine-chilling stories. Mark Stevens was just another Uber driver in New York City, working late nights to make ends meet. He had picked up all kinds of passengers, drunk college students, business executives, even a couple of celebrities. But nothing could have prepared him for the ride that changed his life forever. It was nearly 2 a.m. when he received a new request. The pickup location was a quiet street on the outskirts of town, near an old industrial area. That was already strange. Who would be out here at this hour? As he pulled up, a young woman stepped out of the shadows. She was wearing a pale blue dress, her long blonde hair falling loosely over her shoulders. She looked out of place. Her eyes were distant, as if she wasn't really there. Mark rolled down the window. "You Emily?" She nodded silently and slipped into the back seat. "Where to?" he asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. She whispered an address. It was even stranger, an abandoned house on the other side of town. Mark hesitated. He had heard stories about that place. Rumors of a family that had disappeared there years ago. But a ride was a ride. As he drove, he tried making small talk. "You live around here?" Emily remained silent, staring out the window. The silence in the car felt heavier than usual. Then, after what felt like forever, she finally spoke. "It's been a long time since I've been home." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. Something about the way she said it made his stomach turn. Finally, they reached the house. It was a crumbling old Victorian, its windows dark, its wooden porch sagging under years of neglect. Emily opened the door and stepped out. Before Mark could say anything, his phone vibrated. A notification popped up on his screen. "Your last passenger never entered the car." His breath caught in his throat. Slowly, he turned to look at the back seat. It was empty. Emily was gone. Mark's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His pulse pounded in his ears. Had she ever really been there? He looked up again, scanning the house. A faint light flickered in one of the windows. And then, for just a second, he saw her, standing behind the glass, staring at him. And then she was gone. Something was very, very wrong. Mark's heart pounded as he stared at the empty back seat. He knew Emily had been there, he had spoken to her, he had seen her reflection in the mirror. But now, there was no trace of her. A chill crept down his spine as he turned to look at the house again. The window where he had just seen her was completely dark now. No movement. No sign of life. Just an old, decaying house that shouldn't have been occupied at all. His phone buzzed in his trembling hands. Another message from the Uber app. Passenger dropped off successfully. Thank you for your service. Mark felt a wave of nausea wash over him. Passenger? What passenger? She wasn't here anymore. He rubbed his temples. Maybe he was just exhausted. He had been working long shifts all week. Maybe his mind was playing tricks on him. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. Just as he was about to put his car in drive and speed away, he heard something. A faint whisper. "Help me." Mark froze. It had come from the back seat. His breath hitched as he slowly turned his head. Nothing. The seat was empty. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel. This was too much. He needed to get out of here. Slamming his foot on the gas, he tore away from the house, watching in his rearview mirror as it disappeared into the darkness behind him. He didn't stop driving until he was back in the city, the familiar glow of streetlights and neon signs making him feel a little safer. He pulled over outside a 24-hour diner and took a deep breath. His hands were shaking. He needed to clear his head. After ordering a coffee, he pulled out his phone and decided to search for the address Emily had given him. Maybe it would help him understand what had just happened. His blood ran cold when the first search result popped up. The Harrison house, site of a 5-year-old mystery. Emily Harrison still missing. Mark's breath caught in his throat. He clicked the article. It was dated 5 years ago. A young woman, Emily Harrison, had gone missing without a trace. She had lived in that very house with her family. Her parents had died in a fire, but Emily's body had never been found. His hands trembled as he scrolled further. Witnesses had last seen her leaving a party late at night, calling a rideshare to take her home. Mark felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. A rideshare. Just like the one he had given her tonight. He stared at the screen, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. He knew what this meant. Emily had never made it home that night. Until now. And she had chosen him to take her there. The next line of the article made his stomach drop. Some believe Emily's spirit still lingers, trying to return home. Others claim to have seen her reflection in car mirrors, even after she vanished. Mark's mouth went dry. His rearview mirror. He had seen her reflection there, just like the story said. His coffee sat untouched on the counter as his mind raced. He had to go back. He had to find out what had really happened to Emily. But deep down, he wasn't sure if he was ready to face whatever was waiting for him at the Harrison house. Mark sat frozen in the diner, the glow of his phone screen illuminating the dread on his face. His coffee had gone cold. His hands felt clammy. His mind raced with 1,000 questions. Had he really given a ride to a ghost? Was Emily trying to tell him something? He took a deep breath and forced himself to think logically. There had to be an explanation. Maybe someone was messing with him. Maybe the Uber app had glitched. Maybe Emily was alive, hiding, and somehow, the system had made an error. But deep down, he didn't believe that. Because he had seen her vanish. Because he had heard her whisper. And because every instinct in his body told him that something unnatural had happened that night. He knew he had two choices. Pretend none of this ever happened and move on with his life. Go back to the Harrison house and find out the truth. The second option terrified him, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was trying to reach out to him. And then, as if confirming his thoughts, his phone vibrated. A new notification. Unknown number, please, come back. Mark's breath hitched. He stared at the message. He didn't have Emily's number. There was no way she could have texted him. But he knew who it was. His pulse pounded in his ears as he stood up, left a few bills on the counter, and walked out to his car. The city lights faded in his rearview mirror as he drove toward the outskirts of town. The roads became darker, emptier. His fingers gripped the steering wheel tightly. Every shadow on the roadside looked like a figure standing still, watching him. His mind replayed the events from earlier. Emily's silent presence. The way she had disappeared. The notification that said she had never entered his car. What had really happened to her? And why had she chosen him to take her home? After what felt like an eternity, he reached the house. It was even worse in the darkness. The overgrown yard, the broken windows, the eerie silence, it all screamed stay away. But he couldn't. He stepped out of the car, the cold night air biting his skin. His heartbeat was so loud it drowned out the crickets in the distance. The front door was slightly open, swaying with the wind. It made a soft creaking sound, like a whisper beckoning him inside. Mark hesitated. Every instinct told him to run. Then, he heard it. A soft sobbing from inside the house. His stomach twisted. Emily. She was in there. He was sure of it. Taking a deep breath, he stepped onto the porch. The wooden boards creaked under his weight. The moment he touched the front door, it swung open on its own. The darkness inside swallowed him whole. Inside the Harrison house. The air inside was thick with dust and decay. The wallpaper was peeling, and the floor was littered with broken furniture. The sobbing had stopped. Mark pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The dim beam illuminated the dust floating in the air. He took a cautious step forward. Something about the house felt wrong. It wasn't just old, it felt stuck in time. Like a place abandoned by the world but still trapped in its own past. Then, his phone screen glitched. The flashlight flickered. And suddenly, the whisper came again. "Help me." His breath caught in his throat. The voice was right next to him. He spun around, aiming the light wildly. No one was there. Mark's chest rose and fell rapidly. He was losing his mind. Then his phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. Mark's grip on the phone tightened. His mouth was dry. The basement? He swept the flashlight over the room and spotted an old wooden door at the far end of the hallway. It was slightly ajar. A cold draft seeped through the gap, making his skin prickle. His gut told him whatever he was looking for was down there. He took a shaky step forward. Then another. His heartbeat felt like a drum in his chest. He reached the door. Placed his hand on it. And then. The door slammed shut before he could open it. Mark stumbled back, his breath ragged. His flashlight flickered violently before dying completely. The house plunged into darkness. And then, from behind the door, he heard it. A sound that made his blood run ice cold. A faint knocking. Knock. 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 Then, a whisper. "I've been waiting for you." The voice was no longer sad. It was smiling. Mark turned and ran. Mark's breath came in short gasps as he pressed his back against the wall, his heart pounding in his ears. The house was suffocatingly silent now, except for the soft knocking from behind the basement door. Knock. 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 Each tap was slow, deliberate, like something was waiting for him to answer. Then, the whisper came again. "I've been waiting for you." But this time, it wasn't just a whisper. It was right next to his ear. Mark flinched, spinning around with his dead phone in hand, as if the useless screen could protect him. His flashlight had completely stopped working. His instincts screamed at him to run, but something inside him, some inexplicable force, kept him rooted in place. He had to know. He had to know what happened to Emily. Swallowing his fear, he reached out and grabbed the basement door handle. It was ice cold, sending a shiver through his body. With a deep breath, he turned it and pulled. The door creaked open. A gust of freezing air rushed past him, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something rotten. Mark hesitated. The darkness below seemed almost alive, pulsing, shifting, like it was waiting for him to step inside. A single, flickering light bulb hung from the ceiling, barely illuminating the rickety wooden stairs that led down into the abyss. And then he saw them. Footprints. Fresh, muddy footprints leading downward. His stomach twisted. Someone, or something, had just gone down there. Maybe Emily. Maybe not. He clenched his jaw and took the first step. The wood groaned under his weight. The moment his foot touched the second step, the basement door slammed shut behind him, plunging him into near-total darkness. Mark's body stiffened. His breathing grew uneven. He had no choice now. He had to keep going. Each step creaked under his weight as he made his way down. The light bulb above flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows against the cold concrete walls. Halfway down, something brushed against his arm. He jerked away, his breath catching in his throat. He lifted his phone, hoping its dead screen would somehow reveal what had touched him. Nothing. Just air. But then, he felt it again. A cold breath against the back of his neck. Mark spun around. Nobody was there. His pulse hammered in his skull as he turned back toward the basement floor. Only a few more steps. He forced himself to move. The moment his foot hit the ground, the flickering light stabilized. And that's when he saw it. At the far end of the room, partially hidden in the shadows, was a wooden chair. And in that chair sat Emily. Her head was tilted downward, her long, blonde hair covering her face. Her pale blue dress was dirty and torn. Her hands rested in her lap, unnaturally still. Mark's body went rigid. "Emily," he whispered. She didn't move. His throat felt dry as he took a cautious step forward. The air in the basement was heavy, pressing against him, suffocating him. "Emily," he said again, louder this time. Her head twitched slightly. Mark stopped breathing. Slowly, painfully, her head lifted. Her hair fell away from her face. And Mark's blood turned to ice. Emily's face was wrong. Her eyes were completely black, hollow voids that seemed to stretch into infinity. Her lips curved into an unnatural smile, stretching far beyond what a human mouth should be able to. And then, in a voice that was not her own, she spoke. "You finally came back for me." Mark stumbled backward, his legs barely responding. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body refused to move. Emily, or whatever was wearing her face, began to rise from the chair. The moment her feet touched the ground, the light bulb above exploded, plunging the room into total darkness. Mark's breath came in short, panicked bursts. He fumbled for his phone, desperately pressing buttons, trying to get the flashlight to work. And then, cold fingers wrapped around his wrist. A sharp, icy pain shot through his arm as the grip tightened, pulling him forward. Mark let out a strangled yell and ripped himself free, stumbling backward. His foot caught on something, and he crashed to the floor. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, a soft voice echoed through the darkness. "You were my last ride." Mark's breath hitched. What? The air shifted around him. Something moved in the shadows. And then it all made sense. Emily had called for a ride 5 years ago. But she had never made it home. Because she had never left the car alive. Mark wasn't the first driver to take her home. He was just the only one who had come back. The realization hit him like a freight train. Emily hadn't just disappeared. She had been murdered. And now, she was trapped here. Waiting. But for what? His pulse thundered in his ears as he crawled backward, trying to put distance between himself and whatever thing was lurking in the darkness. Then, he heard the knocking again. Knock. 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 But this time, it was coming from inside the walls. Something, or someone, was buried here. Mark's mind screamed for him to leave. Forget Emily. Forget the house. Just run. But as he scrambled to his feet, a single thought took root in his mind. If he left now, this would happen again. Another driver. Another night. Another forgotten passenger. Emily would never stop. Unless he found a way to set her free. But how? Mark's shaking fingers gripped his phone. He didn't know if he had the strength to face what came next. But one thing was clear. He was not leaving this house until he uncovered the truth. Even if it killed him. Mark stood frozen in the suffocating darkness of the basement, his breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The air around him was thick, heavy, as if the house itself was alive, watching him, waiting for him to make a move. The knocking had stopped. But the whispers hadn't. They slithered through the darkness like unseen fingers brushing against his skin. You were my last ride. Find me. He's still here. Mark's fingers trembled as he fumbled for his phone, desperately trying to turn on the flashlight. His pulse thundered in his ears. His body screamed at him to run, but something stronger held him in place. He needed to know. Something had happened to Emily in this house. Something terrible. And someone had buried the truth. He took a shaky breath and reached out, feeling along the cold, damp basement wall. The whispers grew louder, almost frantic, as if urging him forward. And then, his fingers brushed against something soft. Mark recoiled instantly, his stomach twisting. He lifted his phone, pressing the power button over and over until the flashlight flickered on. And what it revealed made his blood run cold. The body in the walls. A hand protruded from the crumbling concrete wall. Pale. Motionless. The skin stretched thin over bone, fingers curled slightly as if frozen in the act of grasping for help that never came. Mark's breath caught in his throat. He staggered backward, his mind refusing to accept what he was seeing. Emily hadn't just disappeared. She had been buried alive. His stomach churned as he stepped closer, the realization slamming into him like a truck. She never made it out of this house. Someone had killed her and sealed her body inside the walls. And now, she was trying to escape. A deep chill crept up Mark's spine as the whispers returned, no longer fragmented, but clear. "Help me." Mark's body moved before his mind could catch up. He grabbed a nearby rusted shovel and began digging. His hands shook as he chipped away at the crumbling cement, dirt and debris clouding the air. The whispers grew louder, rising to an almost unbearable pitch, until crack. The wall split open, and Emily's body tumbled forward. Mark staggered backward, bile rising in his throat. She was still wearing the same pale blue dress. The same one she had worn in his car. But her face. Her face was twisted in terror, frozen in the last moments of her life. Her mouth was open, as if she had been screaming when she died. Mark's hands trembled as he stepped closer. He had to call the police. He had to. "You found me." Mark's blood turned to ice. The voice hadn't come from his head. It had come from behind him. Slowly, Mark turned. Emily stood at the bottom of the stairs, her body eerily still. Her eyes were no longer hollow black voids. They were human now, filled with pain, sorrow, and something else. Recognition. She stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the cold concrete floor. "You brought me home," she whispered. Mark swallowed hard. His throat was dry. "Emily. You were my last ride," she said again, her voice tinged with sadness. "But I never made it home." He made sure of that. Mark's heart pounded. "Who?" Emily lifted a trembling hand and pointed to the shadows. Mark turned, his flashlight sweeping over the dark corners of the basement. For a moment, he saw nothing. And then, a figure stepped forward. Mark's breath caught in his throat. It was a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothes. His face was twisted in a grin, eyes empty of anything remotely human. He looked wrong. Like he didn't belong in the world of the living. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "My driver." Mark's stomach dropped. This was him. The driver who had picked up Emily 5 years ago. The man who had never taken her home. A race against time. The figure lunged. Mark barely had time to react. He dove to the side as a cold, shadowy hand swiped through the air where his neck had just been. The basement shook, the walls trembling as if the house itself was rejecting the presence of the man. Emily's whispers turned into a wail, an ear-piercing cry that echoed through the room. Mark scrambled to his feet. He had to get out. He turned to run, but the figure was already there. A strong, unseen force gripped his throat, lifting him off the ground. Mark gasped, his vision blurring as the pressure increased. The driver's grin widened. You should have left, the voice slithered into Mark's mind. Now you'll stay, just like her. Mark's fingers clawed at the invisible grip, his lungs screaming for air. He was going to die here. Just like Emily. And then Emily screamed. The air rippled, like reality itself was breaking apart. The driver jerked violently, his form glitching, flickering in and out of existence. Mark collapsed to the ground, coughing, as the force released him. Emily's eyes burned with fury. You won't take another, she hissed. The driver let out a shriek, his body contorting, twisting as Emily raised her hands. The basement exploded with light. Mark shielded his eyes as a wave of energy surged through the room, shaking the foundation of the house. The driver let out one final, inhuman scream. And then he was gone. The house fell silent. Mark blinked, his vision adjusting as the light faded. Emily stood before him, her form fading, becoming lighter, as if she were turning into mist. She looked at peace. You did it, Mark breathed. Emily gave him a sad smile. Thank you. Mark swallowed the lump in his throat. What happens now? Emily looked toward the broken wall where her body had been. Now, they'll find me. Mark realized what she meant. With her remains uncovered, her real story would finally be told. She would no longer be forgotten. Emily's form became almost transparent. She took one last step forward. And gently pressed her cold hand against Mark's. Goodbye, Mark. And then she was gone. The next morning, the police arrived at the Harrison house. Emily's remains were recovered. The case that had been unsolved for 5 years was finally closed. Her old driver. He had never been caught. His real identity was still a mystery. But after that night, he was never seen again. Mark deleted his rideshare app the next day. He never drove another passenger again. But sometimes, late at night, when he passed by an empty road, his phone would vibrate. And a message would appear. Thank you for the ride. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget like, subscribe and share. If you want this story part 2, please comment on my video.